What's up, guys? Welcome back to Engine25 Reviews, the show where I invite friends, colleagues, academics, others who are way smarter and more qualified than me, and we chat movies, TV shows, and generally just nerd about stuff we think is cool. If you like that, hit that subscribe button, ring that bell, tell your friends. Doing my best to get episodes out at least every 2 weeks, usually on Sundays. If you ring the bell, you'll never miss one. I'm also likely going to start doing some short form mini reviews, kind of like I used to do on this channel back in the day, because I see more movies than I'm able to review on the panel shows because life is a thing. So just keep an eye out for that. Anyway, we're available on YouTube and as an audio podcast on Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Pocket Casts, and Radio Public. Just search Engine25 on your Engine25 Reviews on your favorite service, no space in Engine25, or hit one of the links in the notes down below. My name is Brandon. I'm your host. You can find me at Engine25 on all the things, sometimes with an underscore at the end. Today, we're talking Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves. But before we get there, I want to introduce our guests. There's some old gaming buddies. I got my buddy Luke. He is the dungeon master on Station 42, the Station 42 YouTube channel, where he's running a weekly. Is it weekly, Luke? A weekly Pathfinder campaign.
Bi-weekly at the moment. Editing schedule is subject to my own real life stuffs.
Oh, I say bi-weekly. It's been like probably 3 weeks since the last one of these. And we also have Kat Feingold with us, who is also an avid gamer. You can find... actually, I didn't ask exactly what that Instagram is. Is it art that you draw? It's a Kit10 underscore Honu. It's there on the screen. But yeah, tell me about yourself, Kat, and about your Instagram.
Oh, so I kind of create a small comic, a little bit of a web comic that I'm slowly starting to put out there for people to see. I'm also an avid mini painter, though I'm not great at it, and photos of that are getting put up there as well.
Nice.
So, and I'm an avid gamer. I am attempting to DM a couple of games right now, and just love to play.
Hell yeah, that's that's why we're here reviewing this movie. We all like to game, and in fact, I set up something special for this one, and I don't really have any specific reason why. I'm just going to do it randomly, I suppose. I can roll dice, and they appear on the show, and it's exciting for me. Anyway, what have you guys, other than Dungeons and Dragons, the movie, what have you been watching or playing lately that it's worth talking about?
I'm in the middle of playing the Resident Evil 4 remake over and over again until I can finally unlock the stuff that I want to. Infinite rocket launchers are fun until they go off in your face.
That is correct. I agree. What about you, Kat? What do you got going on?
120 hours deep into Hogwarts Legacy, and I want my own hippogriff. That's all there is to it.
I haven't even played the game, and I want my own hippogriff.
That sounds great to me. I've got some feelings about the creator of Harry Potter these days, but
let's not get into that.
I don't want to talk about it, but it's a thing, and
that's a rabbit. That's a rabbit hole down underneath the Whomping Willow. We do not need to go down.
That is true.
We've all got feelings about the creator, but the game's actually pretty good.
So jumping back around to the movie, Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves is directed by Jonathan Goldstein and John Francis Daly, John and John, as it were. Didn't know offhand a lot of their previous work. They've been writers on a bunch of movies I like, though. Looking at Jonathan Goldstein's Wikipedia here, he wrote Horrible Bosses. He was a writer on Spider-Man Homecoming.
Yeah.
He also, unfortunately, wrote and directed that terrible vacation movie with Ed Helms. So that's a thing. But
sometimes you got to pay rent, you know.
That's how it goes. He's a frequent collaborator with John Francis Daly. Apparently, they have a lot of the same credits in the writing space. So that's pretty cool. There also a writer on this movie is Chris McKay, and he has written stuff like the Lego Batman movie. He's the director of the upcoming Renfield movie where Nicolas Cage plays Dracula.
I'm looking forward to go see that.
Interesting. Yeah, the premise intrigued me, but that first trailer was awful. Some of the newer trailers are a little more interesting and more the vibe I was hoping for. So it's probably it's on the list for sure.
Yeah, and those writing credits do show in the kind of writing that this movie has.
I agree with that completely for sure. So where was I? The movie premiered at South by Southwest in early March and was released on March 31, 2023 by Paramount Pictures. Had a production budget of around $150 million. And as of this recording, it is Saturday, April 8th. It's earned a little over $85 million worldwide. Numbers for Friday, that's yesterday, are not reported yet. But that is okay. It's not super great. It came out the week before the Mario movie, and the Mario movie is just going to control April.
Yeah, and also what was the last big fantasy movie that came out? Wasn't it Warcraft? Like the big high fantasy movie, like movie. I'm not talking about TV shows or anything like House of the Dragon or anything, because fantasy movies at the box office lately have kind of been, yeah.
But yeah, you're not wrong. I am. Let's see if I can find quickly. But you're not wrong, and it's
Actually, I am wrong. I think the last big fantasy movie, quote unquote, was Onward, and that barely counts as the kind of fantasy.
But that's a Pixar movie, and that made decent money considering it was like the last movie that came out before the pandemic hit. And it was still, I don't think it did crazy numbers, but it was, it was out for a couple of weeks and then the world ended. But and I guess that's a thing. Fantasy has been doing great on TV lately, like with The Witcher. Rings of Power started really strong in the ratings, and then it kind of tapered off because it was a big, weird mess. And that's for somebody who actually liked the show, and I did an episode about it on the channel, and it's all right. A lot of good ideas, a lot of weirdness. But that's an interesting note about fantasy that I don't think is wrong. I also think that it's a similar story we're going to get, and I'll look back on this later in the year, but we're going to get kind of a decent, solid to good opening weekends for a lot of stuff, and then they're going to taper off because there's a lot of movies coming out this summer, a lot of big IP movies. Almost weekly, like starting with it's April took a step back. There was a bunch of movies in March. And then with beginning of April here, there's a couple of weeks, like Evil Dead Rise is probably the next big-ish one, and it's not going to do crazy money, but it's going to do great for horror movies always make money because they're made for cheap. So it's going to do great in that regard. And horror is the thing that's consistent success at the box office right now. But we go in once Guardians of the Galaxy 3 comes out, there is a big IP movie every week basically until August. And they cannot all be successful. And this movie, it came out a week before Mario, and that's probably better for it than coming out a week after Mario. But that Super Mario movie is going to make crazy money.
Illumination, those fucking minions just bring in the cash. It lets Illumination do all this really
Just print money, dude. I don't want to take the time now, but like they're the Minions movie, all the Despicable Me movies did very well for animation. And it's not common for animated films to get to break $1 billion, particularly if they're not made by Disney. And at least one or two of those Despicable Me movies did it. That's a lot of money. And
especially when people go to see The Rise of Gru in suits for the memes. Whoop, let me mute my phone.
Oh, you probably got the same message that I did. Adam's logging in. Yeah, my buddy Adam's going to join us here. He's a regular guest on the show. But yeah, we're just talking about. I guess I bring it up because I love Dungeons and Dragons, and like almost surprisingly, like I didn't know what to expect from this movie, and I generally really liked it. So I would like them to make more of them, but Hasbro's not going to do it if that number doesn't go up faster. Or actually, Paramount. Hasbro would love to make more movies. Paramount won't do it if it doesn't make some more money.
Hasbro's running damage control right now.
Yeah, let's
not talk about that either.
Talk about the OGL, but just a side note for people who don't know, the OGL is it's a point of contention about how content surrounding Dungeons and Dragons is used by its fans. And Hasbro tried to do some things to change the OGL in ways that none of us liked. But we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about movies. Yeah, so unless it does really well in like home video, I'm curious if they're going to make another one of these anytime soon. It's been a while since the last one, and in fact, there are more Dungeons and Dragons movies than I was aware of. I know about the one from like 2000 with Jeremy Irons. Apparently, that movie got 2 sequels. One of them was in the movie theater. One of them released in the movie theater, and it focused on the Damodar character, who is the guy with the squid in his ears.
Bruce Payne.
Sure, I have no idea.
The guy with blue lips.
Yeah, the blue lips guy. He was the main character.
The bad guy from Highlander Endgame.
In the second D&D movie, and then there was a third D&D movie that went direct to video, like when we were in college, that I didn't know about until I was researching for this show. So
I've got the animated version of Dragons of Autumn Twilight from Dragonlance.
Nice. I have the first season of the animated TV series on DVD. I should have brought it up here. It's downstairs on the shelf.
Before we get too far away from it, do you want to know why Jeremy Irons was in that D&D movie? It's the most D&D reason. He had just bought a castle and had to pay for it.
Perfect. Way to go, Jeremy Irons. I wonder if he still has a castle.
I don't know, but he did Justice League stuff, so he's still around and making money.
It's true, and but he did the D&D movie, and somehow he didn't learn because he was also in the Aragon movie.
Oh.
Yeah.
I have hopes that comes back rebooted because that has promise as basic, simple fantasy, and I
haven't read the books, but based on what I know, I would agree with you. I think it's a terrible movie, but I also haven't read. I don't know much about it. It seems like an interesting premise.
Read the books. They're actually really good. A lot of people kind of avoid them because they are labeled young adult, but they're really good books. I would recommend them.
Yeah, they're very good for a fantasy intro because the most complicated thing about them is the magic system, which is focused on language. But moving on, we're here to talk about D&D, not the inheritance cycle.
We talk about all sorts of other fantasy things too.
yes, because D&D is responsible for a lot of that kind of stuff these days. But yes, so Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. As I'm going to take host prerogative and go ahead and go first. I really enjoyed this movie, and I like the trailers, but you can never really tell from the trailers. But it took itself just seriously enough, and it's got this like really delightful kind of comedic vibe. It's very Chris Pine, and fans of Chris Pine will understand what that means exactly.
He's doing his Chris Pine thing.
Yeah, they very clearly nailed the vibe of like a D&D party, like, and not just to say that, because most or all of the classes are represented in there by the main characters, but it's also like, that guy's the class clown, and that guy's the nerd, and that guy's the one who talks too much but isn't really saying anything, and they're playing a D&D character, and we've as fans of the game, we've all been there, so it's just I really like the vibe of this movie is where I'm going. What'd you think, Kat? You go ahead.
No, I 100% agree. I went in kind of expecting it to be a hot mess.
Me too.
Even if
even if there was some stuff that I thought was funny, like there were good jokes in the trailer, but
I expected it to be a total hot mess, and I loved every minute of it. Like, I truly enjoyed it as a fantasy movie, not just as a D&D nerd, which I thought they did a really great job, not only capturing the energy of a table in the characters, because like you said, we've all been there, and it absolutely felt like a D&D campaign that they were playing. But they did a really great job running that balance of, you didn't have to be a D&D player to get the movie. They had just enough exposition to the right characters at the right time with the right phrases for anybody to sit through this movie and to enjoy it as a fantasy movie, not necessarily just as a D&D movie. But you got all the fun Easter eggs for those of us who really enjoy the game, even like newbies like me.
Oh yeah.
Go ahead, Luke. Wait, did you say something?
Oh yeah. I was. She was wrapping up, and I was saying, kind of trailing off what she was said. Like, the only thing that the movie doesn't exactly do is show you where things are in relation to everything else. They show the map that looks like this, like during the opening. Oh yeah, this is the promotional material. This is the promotional material, but they basically show a map like this during the opening credits, where the big Dungeons and Dragons, Honor Among Thieves things happen. But basically, the entire movie happens like right around here. Like every place in the movie is like spitting distance from here. Sorry about the middle finger, but everything about there, all the names of places are basically right next to each other, right there. But they don't mention that anywhere.
Right? They do.
You don't have to, really.
Oh, Adam's calling me. I can't. I'm not going to answer. I was going to say that they make references to Thay, the Red Wizards of Thay, which is another. Yeah. That's another place that's pretty far away, but we don't visit that place in the movie.
Exactly. Like, for example, the Neverwinter Wood, the city of Neverwinter, the town of Tribor, the Crypt Garden Forest, they're all right next to each other. Hi, Adam. We're in the middle. You're coming in late.
Sorry about that.
It's okay. You were busy today. But as far as the overall tone of the movie, it was hilarious, which I was looking forward to. It was entertaining, and I didn't find anything in it really, like, problematic at all. There's a couple of things I'll get to later based on our little itinerary, but there's a stance that I take as far as, like, DMs telling a story, that it is not the DM's job to be original, it's the DM's job to be entertaining. About 90%.
I agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah, about 90% of the stuff in this movie you have seen somewhere else. The names are different, the places are different, the order of events is different, but you have seen it before. But there is still that 10% of different or similar things that you've seen before, but done differently. And it helps those stand out really good. Like the effects for halflings, instead of just doing what they did in Lord of the Rings and just having like body doubles and swapping faces, they just have an effect to make the person small, which works fine. And the effects in this movie are also, like, for the most part, pretty damn good.
It mostly works fine now. It did not work like that in 2001 when they were making Lord of the Rings, which is why they used a lot of body doubles and camera tricks.
Yeah, but it's like you've seen,
On that note, sorry, go ahead, finish your thought.
Yeah, it's like you've seen, like, you can see the actor playing themselves, but they are just in post made 3 feet tall instead of putting their face on someone who's using camera tricks to appear 3 feet tall.
Go ahead, Adam. And in fact, you can segue into your thoughts on the movie, because that's where we were when you joined in.
Okay, cool. So I didn't miss much. But Brandon, to your point, by the way, hi again, everybody who's seen one of these shows before. But you made the comment of, like, practical effects and body doubles, and I commend this movie for how many practical effects it still used.
Yeah.
Like, the Dragonborns and the Tabaxi and all those were still people in costumes. And the Tabaxi looked a little rough, but we only saw it for about 20 seconds. So, like, it's still pretty cool that practical effects, and then they were treated respectfully in the movie. They weren't seen as gimmicky or dumb, so they weren't treated that way.
Yes, it's just very comfortably stuff that exists here. Even like some of the what I would say is probably some uncommon races, like Aarakocra, and one of my favorite races. There's a single shot of a Yanti, which is like a snake-headed race. It was a character that was locked up in the prison at the beginning of the movie. So that characters that are, and they're, at least according to the lore, D&D is wherever you want it to be. But these are relatively unusual races, even in the world. But they're here, and they look like they belong there, and people aren't. The people just act like they belong there. They're not really weirded out by them. Which is could have been mishandled in a lot of ways, I would say.
Yeah, like the no-name prisoner that was getting Jurassic Park offloaded at the beginning. That's apparently a bugbear. I originally thought it was an orc.
I thought it was an orc. It didn't look like bugbear art, but doesn't matter.
Let's spend the next hour picking apart what bugbears are supposed to look like.
Bugbear. I'm very opinionated.
Tell the folks at home what a bugbear is. Anyone,
bugbear. Physically, a bugbear is like the orc version of a goblin. I guess. Well, no, that'd be a hobgoblin. Well, not even there. It really is. It's the orc. It's somewhere between like an orc and an ogre. It's big, brutish, hairy. Usually has very long arms. Because the most of the depictions don't show them quite as piggish as that character was. That's why I didn't think of him as a bugbear.
And I think like a boar-headed, like a pig-headed creature is another thing in D&D. Go ahead, Luke.
It is a relatively minor point because it's just a showing that, yes, fantasy world. Where it's because since the start kind of looks a little bit like, the North or the Wall in Game of Thrones. I think they're just flat out showing us, by the way, things other than humans exist in this world just to get you guys on the same page.
Yeah, and it's very Star Wars in that way. Like there are people that exist, and they're just people that live here, and it's for in general very normal for them. So that's and like it doesn't bring attention really to the fact that there are these other amazing races there. They're just there, and then people accept it. And it also makes Michelle Rodriguez look badass when she beats the crap out of it. That is also true. He got the monster manual. Hold on, let's see if I can. Oh no, it broke.
Yes.
Okay.
That's a bugbear.
It looks like
according to the game itself.
That 5th edition monster manual. Yep. Okay. So talking about characters, we kind of mentioned that like the characters here, they're all different, they're all unique, and they fit into a class. Each of D&D class very clearly. D&D it's a class-based game where you choose you kind of choose ahead what kind of character you want to make, and you pick a class based on that. And there are fighters, which are they fight stuff, and then rogues, which are like generally kind of sneaky, or barbarians, which are like big hulking fighters that are like really mad and less specialized, and then druids, which are like nature magic, and then you have various forms of magic as we go. And a lot of these are represented in the movie. Chris Pine plays Edgin the Bard. Hugh Grant plays Forge the Rogue. And by the way, what Forge is the name of one of my D&D characters that I used to play. He was a druid, like a master of many forms. Michelle Rodriguez plays Holga the Barbarian. And then Sophia Lillis, she's from the It movie. She plays Doric the Druid. Regé Jean Page plays Zenk the Paladin. Zenk with an X, apparently. I learned that from Wikipedia a little while ago. And then Justice Smith plays Simon the Sorcerer. And then the villain, well, there's another villain, but there's the obviously evil looking person. Yes. Daisy Head plays Sophina the Red Wizard, and by the way, a wizard is actually different than a sorcerer in D&D. You know, they seem.
You wouldn't know it watching this movie.
Spoiler tag here.
What? Listen. The Red Wizards are revealed in the first scene. It's a big deal.
Right. But not that she's one.
Fair.
Well, you also see it in the trailer, so.
Anywho, yeah, there's anything anyone wants to talk about regarding the cast. Like I said earlier, this is a very Chris Pine kind of movie. You know, he's got a very specific kind of swagger and sense of humor that this movie, I think, capitalizes on very well.
Yeah, I actually saw someone describe it, and I agree with this wholeheartedly, that Chris Pine is a character actor trapped in the body of a leading man.
That's really funny.
And also, evidently, that actually was Chris Pine actually playing the lute on screen. It helped him get the role because he's played the guitar for like 30 years, and the lute was close to a ukulele. So it wasn't that hard for him to translate. So he actually was playing the lute.
Nice.
You could tell he had to look down and check his fingers when he started playing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, by the way, I enjoyed every character in this movie, even the ones that showed up for a single scene. Every character was great. Even if they were an archetype, they were great.
Nothing wrong with being an archetype, I think, as long as, you know, like if you fulfill the archetype effectively and you're, you know, just generally likable.
Yeah, that's me kind of saying how Sophina is your, you know, stock fantasy evil wizard type.
It's true. And she doesn't really...
Especially since that forces her to be the straight man against everybody in the main party.
That's true. You know, and she doesn't really talk much. Interesting tidbit. She is the daughter of Anthony Head, who plays Giles in the Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Oh. Did not know that.
So that's an interesting bit. Well, who else did I like? I really like Sophia Lillis in anything I've seen her in. Michelle Rodriguez is always like the awesome kick-ass kind of woman character.
If I am not normally a fan of paladins, but Precision Page, like, he nailed it in such a fantastic way. When he was on screen, I could not stop watching him just for the sheer charisma and energy he brought his character. Like,
charisma is paladin's secondary stat.
It was amazing. Like, he was really phenomenal in a class that I generally am not a big fan of. I kind of want to play a paladin now because
they're boring and straight-laced. Or why don't you like paladins?
Honestly, I kind of find their mechanics a little bit boring. Like, it has nothing to do with the role play aspect of them. I just kind of, which is weird because I love warlocks and their thing is I'm going to Eldritch Blast you, but in a paladin, it's like I'm going to smite you. But I don't know. I've played one once and I didn't enjoy it because of the mechanics, but watching him on the screen play a paladin, I really want to play one now so badly.
Nice.
And again, coming out of the theater, I specifically told everyone in our group, which included these two, that Hugh Grant was just going full Willem Dafoe in the Spider-Man movies, leaving no scenery unchewed. He is visibly having the time of his life.
Because he's in a D&D movie, and I love D&D, I love games. It's ridiculous that he's in a D&D movie. And, you know, he's like, a lot of this cast are really talented, and they're way better than D&D deserves. But they are here, and they are having a great time, and I appreciate it.
And also, Hugh Grant's hilarious in this movie.
That is true.
His comedic timing and the voice he picked. And also, this is also probably the best thing I've seen Justice Smith in.
He's in the Pokemon Detective Pikachu movie. He was
just kind of there in that one.
Yeah, because
the star was Ryan Reynolds' voice anyway.
It's true. And then he's in the Jurassic World movies.
I hated him in Fallen Kingdom. I hated his ass.
Yeah, and he's back briefly in Dominion too, and he's just like a like a little like scaredy kind of guy who's not that interesting. But
You broke it again.
or do you guys see what's happening? Oh,
Yes.
Yep.
oops. I'm trying to fix something else and I'm messing up everything else. I'm messing up this.
It's okay. I've got a voice. They don't need to see me. There we go.
Adam, any notes on characters and stuff?
I think all of the characters were phenomenal. I always forget how much I enjoy Michelle Rodriguez's characters in any movie that she's in.
It's true. You know, I've always liked her in the Fast and the Furious movies. You know, it's just like she's always around. She's always awesome.
Or Avatar, in
Yeah,
Avatar,
she's like the pilot in the first Avatar movie.
I was sitting here thinking, like, I was like, man, Michelle Rodriguez is really underrated. And I don't know if she's underrated or my brain just keeps underrating her in like what I don't think about her. So that was fun. Chris Pine was phenomenal, no doubt, had no doubts there. And can we give like 5 seconds to talk about Bradley Cooper?
Later.
Later. Well, okay, yeah. Let's. That'll be the first thing. Any other specifics we want to talk about in the non-spoiler section? I think Luke had something to talk about with cinematography and just the general kind of visual look of the movie.
Oh yeah. So I've seen this movie twice already, both times in different theaters. One was a bit more rundown and definitely showing its age, and another one was more modern. So in the newer theater, the bass kind of drowned out some of the whispery, mumbly lines. So, I mean, there was one time when the villain very obviously says whispers, kill them both. But at the second theater, I could barely hear that. But since I'd seen it at the first theater, I knew it's what they said. Yeah. But the cinematography, the primary thing that I want to say is this movie has finally learned the lesson that Hollywood for the last 8 years has refused to learn. And it's that I don't give a damn how realistic it looks. If it's too dark to see, I can't see what's going on. So whenever there is a dark scene, whether it's there at nighttime around a campfire, literally in the Underdark or in the back of a closed wagon, it is lit well enough that I can see everything that's happening on screen and comprehend it. Like, even when they're in the Underdark, they've got bioluminescent fungus giving everything that Disney lime green be prepared glow until they get to a place where it's illuminated orange because there's lava, or they actually turn up the orange light for firelight when they're sitting around at night a campfire. You can see what's happening in the movie. Hollywood,
That's
Battle of
always
Winterfell,
appreciated. Yes.
take notes. But also the fight scenes, it wasn't one of those choppy edited, like no shot lasts longer than 3 second things. Like there are extended bits of fight choreography that you get to see because the camera stays on it for like a good 20 seconds. Like when Zank is fighting, you get to see all of that happen, and it just proves how much of a badass he is.
That's true. He's a dude with a sword, and he's beautiful, and he kicks ass with it.
Oh yeah. I especially also like that they worked in the Sword and the Sorcerer Yo-Dog sword. Yo-Dog, I heard you like weapons, so I put weapons in your weapons so you can use weapons while you use your weapons.
Perfect.
Yeah, because he fires off the thing and there's a dagger left behind.
Spoilers, yeah.
Yeah, that's...
The rules here aren't that specific, or they're not well enforced.
That's not a plot thing. That's more just like an idea that's not plot relevant at all. It just looks... The directors specifically said that they went more rule of cool instead of adhering directly to 5th edition rules, which is why Sophia is able to use more than one level 9 spell without resting.
I listen to a lot of podcasts, and one of the shows I listen to, it's Cinephiles with John Roca, and he they've been doing the Quentin Tarantino movies, and they recently did an episode on the Django Unchained, and they kept bringing up this point of a thing that Quentin Tarantino once said was, never let authenticity get in the way of a good story. And because they're, like there are weapons that didn't exist and language that wouldn't have been used after the, in the Civil War, like Annabella or, Annabelle, blah, blah, blah. But there's, in general, I agree with that sentiment. So I enjoy the lore, but I don't pick it apart if you tell me a good story and I'm having fun in the meantime. I think it's, go ahead. Somebody can talk.
It's also problematic to start fussing about lore Dungeons and Dragons because, the game itself explains that, you can change things at your table. We don't know who the DM is for this story being told. And also, Oryx, wild shapes especially, I know some people had problems with it, but by the new rules, it's not out, by the rules that will be coming up soon, the next edition's rules.
For 1D&D?
Mm-hmm.
For 1D&D, it's already within the rules. So, and that she couldn't change into an owlbear, for example. She's in the trailer and people complained about.
But it was cool.
Why can't she change into an owlbear? Owlbears are cool.
Because they're a magical beast, not a regular beast.
Rules.
Hey, well, and then my nitpick to respond to those nitpicks would be that, well, nothing that she does as an owlbear is any different than she could have done as a brown bear, which is what everybody who wild shapes in 5th edition wild shapes into anywhere because it has the best stat block. So maybe it's just a brown bear that the DM said, sure, you can look like an owlbear.
Yeah.
I would allow that at my table.
in defense of that, both of those things are terrifying. Brown bears and owlbears.
Agreed. As a complete side note, your arbitrary rolling has the player in me with like a moment, because anyone else who's a player that's watching this knows that the Dungeon Master will arbitrarily roll behind the screen, and you have that moment where you're like, what is he about to do now? Or what are they planning to throw at us? And every time you roll a dice and then move it, I'm like, we're going to change something any moment now.
Maybe we are.
You were looking for...
Go ahead, Adam.
When we have to respond to one of your questions, roll initiative for us.
Yes.
That could be fun.
And see if we can get the die to end on our screens.
That's hard. Like, it's hard even just to know when it's going to land under the camera.
and you're also rolling on a mouse.
Roll it, and then once it's rolled, then set it next to our screen so we know which order we're in.
There we go.
And then you don't have to keep up with what color. Yeah, right on top of my face. Thank you.
Well, Adam got a 3.
Thanks. Well, you haven't asked the question yet.
That's true.
I didn't even know we were in combat.
I got one more movie making thing before we move on that I just realized. Because you were talking about Django Unchained, and I remember seeing Django Unchained in theater, and then when we got out of it, I was like, wait, that was almost 3 hours long. It didn't feel like it. This movie's like, what, 2 hours?
I definitely saw Django Unchained with Adam. Were you there with us?
Yes, I think I was, yeah. Yeah, because we got out, I was like, that was almost 3 hours. It didn't feel like it. I think this movie's like, what, 2 hours, 15 minutes or something?
Yeah, it says an hour and 34 minutes according to Wikipedia.
Really?
So with opening day previews, that notches it in just over 2 hours.
Okay, because with that amount of time for this
2
movie,
hours and 34. What did I say? It's 134 minutes. 2 hours and 14 minutes.
There we go. I was about to say that's
yeah. I was like, that's
you said an hour 30.
Like an hour and a half. So I was like, that does feel short.
That's not right. Yeah.
No.
Well, it's 134 was the correct number.
Okay, so 2 hours, so 2 hours 15 minutes. This movie did not feel like it was 2 hours and 15 minutes. This one felt a lot shorter. The pacing is really, really good, and they fit a lot in there.
I agree with that.
But it didn't feel rough.
It felt long. It didn't feel too long because, the pacing was great. And I think this will be a great example for future players and dungeon masters, in, like how to handle a game, especially like how to handle travel in a game. Because there's several times in the movie where they're like, oh, we're going to go do this. And a lot of tables would struggle with, all right, how many things happen on the road between point A and point B? And in some cases, the traveling from point A to point B in a campaign becomes the entire 6-year-long campaign. I have no experience with this whatsoever. In this movie, when it wasn't important, they just got from point A to point B and then did the thing.
That
only mattered.
An old D&G joke that I've always liked is Dungeons and Dragons is the game where it takes 30 seconds to walk 100 miles and 6.5 hours to do 12 seconds of combat.
Yeah. especially if there's a lot of casters.
That's true. Fucking mages. I just want to roll my big. I just want to swing my big sword most of the time. I like melee.
I also saw that apparently all of the wild shape animals were all CG, and Sophia was a little like really, we're not gonna have any real animals for this wild shape stuff. Like, considering the stuff that these wild shape animals get into, there's a big risk of them not being able to put no animals were harmed in the making of this movie otherwise.
And working with animals is complicated, especially when you have stuff like wolves and bears and large birds, large creatures,
Displacer beasts,
Owl bears, gelatinous.
So I think, it's obvious we all like the movie. I'm going to go ahead and throw the spoiler thing out there. So yeah, anyone watching, listening, we are now, we're going to feel free to talk about anything we want. If you haven't seen the movie, I recommend you go do that, and then come back and watch the rest of the show. But yeah, so the first thing I want to talk about is that. There on the screen is a it's a what do they call it in the memes with the young people, vague memes, or like on memes out of context, spoilers out of
no context.
Yeah. So for the audio listeners, I've thrown the picture of a blue Mini Cooper over everybody's faces, and it's because we made mention of it a little bit ago, but Bradley Cooper plays a halfling in this movie, and it's wonderful.
Who used to be married to Michelle Rodriguez's character. Every single one of our main party members has familial tragedy in their backstories. Edgin's wife is dead. Holga was exiled from her tribe because she fell in love with an outsider, halfling Bradley Cooper. Simon the sorcerer can't live up to his family's arcane legacy, and Doric is a tiefling abandoned by her parents and raised by forest druids.
Very
no happy families in D&D backstories.
Yeah, very D&D. No, I love the Bradley Cooper scene with Michelle Rodriguez because it's very rare in Hollywood that we see a healthy end to a relationship. Either somebody's still holding on to something, or somebody's bitter, or somebody's angry. But we saw what was really it was awkward, because those situations are awkward, and it's just like it was very intriguing to me to see a healthy end to a relationship. And there's still emotions on both sides. That's the way it is. But D&D part aside and hilarity aside, it was refreshing to see something come out of Hollywood going a healthy end to a mutual healthy end to a relationship.
Because of distance and just what they thought would happen didn't work out that way.
Well, I think I read an article that said that they added that scene in post-production, and it was a good example of two characters who gave up everything to be together, only to then realize that they don't really go together.
It's like the ending of The Graduate.
Excellent.
But that scene was refreshing for that reason. So less heavy. It was also hilarious because
the halfling is a type for human-sized barbarian.
He's talking to someone in a giant chair, and then, actually in a regular sized chair, and then it cuts, and then there's a tiny little Bradley Cooper sitting in the chair.
Yeah, when he first was on screen, I was like, "Wait a minute, is that Bradley?"
I wasn't even looking. I was digging in my popcorn bucket, and then I looked up, and there was a tiny Bradley Cooper, and I burst out laughing. And it's probably after everyone else had already had their little chuckle. In my defense, the first theater I saw it on the screen was tiny, and you were really far away. So the fact that he was also small wasn't helping.
That was the first of two cameos in the movie that I had to research what the second one was. Does anybody else know what the second cameo was? I feel bad if you missed it because he's in heavy prosthetics.
Hold on. Well, I
feel like
Wikipedia.
I feel like I read this too, but I couldn't remember what it was.
Wait, what?
Tom Morello from Rage Against the Machine.
Oh, yeah.
In the arena.
Yeah.
And the character that he played was his character that he played.
That's awesome.
Nice.
So he got killed in the movie. We're in spoilers now, so yeah.
Yeah.
He was there for 5 seconds, so it's not like there's any emotional buy-in. But yeah, apparently that was Tom Morello. So again, no worries if you didn't recognize him, because he has a prosthetic nose taking up his entire face.
and a
I don't
big
know.
ass beard.
I don't know that I would recognize him just in general. Like if I just saw him in a movie, well, because he has a look, and if I saw him like looking like Tom Morello, I would know. But I don't know if I would know his face well enough.
And normally I would probably,
Takes out the ball
see him and say, he looks familiar, but then I'd have to Google it who he was. Yeah.
Yeah.
But, yeah. As a
He's
dwarf,
always got like a ball cap, and he's got like a button up, and he's got his bass, or his guitar. But yeah, it's like a. I don't know. Yeah, I'm looking at him right now, and I would not just know that it was Tom Morello.
Isn't that Moby in a baseball cap?
Perhaps. So the basic conceit here is that Chris Pine's character is it the Harpers.
Yes.
That he's so he he's a member of the Harpers, and they do good deeds, and they take nothing for themselves, or blah blah blah. And then
they are the spies for the force of good in the Forgotten Realms.
Yes, thank you for knowing more than me about things.
That's why I have the Dungeon Master costume.
That is true.
Another lovely cameo, the costumes from the '80s show.
So as indeed, later in the movie, if anyone, we mentioned the D&D cartoon a little while ago, and costumes of those characters appear at the big in the big arena finale, as some other folks who were stuck in the arena. But where was I going with this? Oh yeah. So the kind of conceit of the movie is Chris Pine's character Edgin. He's a member of the Harpers, and then through some fault of his own, his wife is killed by a red wizard of Thay. So he spends the rest of the movie trying to seek out this specific treasure, because there's a magical item in this treasure hoard that will allow him to resurrect his wife. And then he gets arrested, and then we catch up with him and Holga at the beginning of the movie trying to break out of jail. Holga played by Michelle Rodriguez. And they break out of jail in a comical way. And if anyone, I love that the dragon, like there's a dragonborn, he's one of the council trying to let it, but we were going to sign your release.
Prove your pardon.
It's like, nope, I'm committed to this plan. I love this plan. It's a good idea, and it's going to make for a great story. But all right, fine.
Point out that's like almost every single table, though. If you've ever played as a Dungeons and Dragons player, every single table has something like that, where your DM's like, I was just gonna let you, fine, whatever, man, do you.
Do you.
Adam,
The DM is sitting there like, yeah, for us to have this story, I have to get y'all out of Rebel's End. I'm not just gonna let you sit there and rot. But no, the players decided to go their own route.
Yeah, but Adam, what was it that we coined in college? Occam's cudgel. It's basically
Schedule, yeah.
the most complicated solution is going to be the one they take.
So they break out of jail by tackling the Aarakocra out of the window, which is like a giant Birdman. They had to use him as a parachute so they could dive out of the tower. And then we spend the rest of the movie kind of getting the team back together, so that we can go to do, what was the city? It's a major D&D city. Neverwinter. Yeah, they're I keep wanting to say that it was Waterdeep, and I knew it wasn't Waterdeep.
They name drop Waterdeep and Baldur's Gate once or twice.
Yeah, because they're all cities on the Sword Coast, right? They're all major cities that are relatively close together. Yeah,
like Neverwinter, Waterdeep, Baldur's Gate.
Yeah. So they're within a few hundred miles of each other.
Baldur's
they're
Gate,
all on the West Coast.
Waterdeep, Neverwinter.
And Neverwinter's funny because it's like always winter there because it's up in the north area.
Yep.
Who I don't know who names these things, but who is Kat? Who's your favorite character in the party, and why? Was it you mentioned the Paladin? Is it probably the Paladin, or is it somebody else?
So that's a really good question. I think my favorite character of the entire party is probably Simon.
I was gonna say.
Because he's just, I mean, you see it from the beginning, because reverse gravity is a huge spell. It's really high up there, so you know he has capability as a sorcerer. So he has the capability. He lacks the self-esteem, and it's really, really unusual to have a sorcerer without self-esteem. But I really enjoyed the sorcerer in this party. I felt that that Simon, played by Justice Smith, just brought something to the party that just worked. Like, you expected Chris Pine and Michelle Rodriguez to be who they were, to be those eye-catching people. And I have not yet had the pleasure, outside of this movie, of seeing Sophia Lillis in anything else, because I'm a bad movie watcher. But I really, really enjoyed the place that Simon the Sorcerer was in the team. I just felt like he was really, I hate to say it, he kind of just helped the cohesiveness of it. And I really enjoyed how he played the sorcerer.
First of all, a sorcerer with a charisma of 7.
Exactly. Like, his journey to becoming a better version of himself in this movie was really great.
Speaking of, Edgin name drops that he's descended from Elminster, one of the most famous wizards in the setting and the lore. And that guy that shows up in those 2 vision scenes,
It's supposed to be Elminster.
It is Elminster. It's actually him. So Edgin wasn't bullshitting. He is descended from Elminster Omar.
But yeah, so Simon the Sorcerer, my favorite, I think.
What? Hold on. If it's higher than a 10, Adam, go next. It's a 10. Luke, who's your favorite character?
I was
Not higher than a 10.
I do legitimately kind of have a tie between Simon and Zank, just because Zank did so much. We're in spoilers, so Zank is not part of the party for the entire campaign. He is the DMPC that shows up for a session because there's going to be a dragon and they might need help. But
that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, that's why I use that example. But yeah, Justice Smith is hilarious, awkward. His attempts to continue to flirt with Doric are constantly hilarious.
And she's just like, not that she's having none of it, but she's just like so stoic and dismissive of it.
Now.
Yeah, it's just like,
we're in the middle of something. Flirt later.
We're busy.
Yeah, but Zank, it's just let's just take the Drax from Guardians of the Galaxy. No, I don't do metaphor. It's like I do not traffic in colloquialisms. To hell with the metaphors. Son of a bitch. You blame his mother for his corruption. He's so encapsulating that stereotype of paladins being lawful stupid, but he's not stupid. He has all of those, for lack of a better term, highfalutin fantasy lines.
It's true.
That stand out so much compared to everybody else in the party that everybody else is just like, who is this guy? What's he talking about?
Because most people in this movie talk pretty normal, except for him, really. Go ahead, Adam.
High wisdom, low intelligence.
Oh yeah, and then he has the world. By the way, I also learned that World's Greatest Exit, that was actually improvised by Renee at the time, because it's just like, all right, let's just keep the camera rolling until something obviously makes us stop. So the whole rock thing was entirely him on the spot, apparently.
Excellent.
And I just love how we're watching it, and just off camera, we just have Edgin going, oh, what's he gonna do? Huh? What's he gonna do? That's one of of the 4 funniest things in the movie. That's one of them. The other one I referenced because after Adam, I think we're going to want to talk about Fat Dragon.
We definitely want to talk about Fat Dragon. Before we get there, Adam, who's your favorite?
Has a name.
We're going to get there later, but party first.
It does have a name, yes.
Yeah, it's not just Fat Dragon. My favorite character. You were asking this, and I don't know. I liked everybody. My wife is over here whispering Doric in my ear. But like all of the characters, there aren't any characters I dislike. I even liked Hugh Grant, as an antagonist, anti-hero, villain. Well, not even anti-hero, like pro-villain. I don't know what it would be, but like
Villain
characters
A versus villain power.
The characters were great. If you like me a torture device and told me to pick one as my favorite, I'd probably say Michelle Rodriguez, because I really liked. Like, yes, she's just another human character in a party of four characters where two of them are human, but she's a reggae nomad, which is a pretty cool dive into Forgotten Realms lore.
One more note on the characters, because this is less obvious. I'm going to try your initiative thing. Oh, there was no way I could have done that on purpose. That they all like landed sort of within the windows. Okay, so we'll go with this order descending. This is a 6.
I can see the dot.
What are the what's the alignment of each character? What do we think? And it's, some of them, a paladin is supposed to be lawful good. And for those who don't know, who, because we're talking a lot of D&D inside baseball here, your character has a class. You also, at character creation, you choose your alignment, which is kind of sort of your moral standing. Are you out for yourself? Do you want to protect people? Are you greedy? Blah, blah, blah. And it has 2 axes. One is law versus chaos, and one is good versus evil. So you are one of each of those 2 things.
With neutral in the middle.
Yeah, and neutral is in the middle of each axis. So
I guarantee you've seen these alignment chart memes online somewhere. If you don't know what they were talking about, this is it.
Yeah, and so I'm curious. I suspect most of them are somewhere in the good area. I'm going to go ahead and throw out that Hugh Grant is chaotic neutral. He don't give a shit about nobody but himself. He doesn't, but he's not like. The reason I don't say he's evil is he doesn't really want to hurt other people. He just wants to take their money and run. So
he just wants to leave the room.
Yes, he wants to leave the room and doesn't want you to notice that he robbed you blind. But what about some other people? Adam, you got the highest initiative, which is a 7, which is embarrassing. But you can go first.
Am I just picking one character?
How many? Yeah, just throw out one, whatever you think, and then if someone else disagrees, they can chime in.
I would go with Edgin and say that he's neutral good.
Okay.
Oh, like he's neutral. He's neutral good who hit hard times and then thinks he became chaotic neutral.
That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, because he does have a very kind of personal, I don't want, he's not a greedy person, but his goal is very personally self-motivated, in that he wants to resurrect his wife, and later on he kind of realizes that maybe that's not the right person he should pick. But I dig that.
But he doesn't. I don't think he wants to resurrect his wife because he wants his wife back. That's part of it. But he wants to resurrect his daughter's mother, which is why we get at the end. Yeah. That's who he ends up with.
He makes a turn, and we'll talk about that in a little bit in more detail.
And before we move on, for all of you gamers who haven't seen the movie, shame on you. 1 and 2, they name drop the fact that clerics can't resurrect her because she was killed by a special dagger. That's why. Continue.
They do. They make that very clear. Luke, pick a character and see if you can nail their alignment.
For the entirely opposite reason, Doric is also neutral good. Primarily, this is just mechanically because druids have to be neutral on at least one thing. But as soon as they find out, hey, the guy who's tearing down your home, we're going to go pants him in front of the entire world. She's like, oh, okay, let's go punish the evil guy.
I'm in.
And as soon as she finds out the people are liars, she immediately starts and I thought you were better than this whole thing. That's a very good person thing to do. If you find out you've been betrayed, you start feeling personally wounded. Within the context that it happens, it makes me say that she's neutral good, all things considered.
Okay. Kat, what alignment do we think Holga is? Or if you have a different one, go ahead. But I'm also curious what we think about Holga.
Let me think. Holga. So I get it. See, I'm a bad person to ask about alignments because I have a real rough time with alignments on my own characters, let alone looking at somebody else's character and then going, oh, well, I really think blank for them.
And also, they did release official character sheets for these movie characters. We're not looking at those.
No, we're not looking at
I literally had no idea. I came up with this. It wasn't even in the run of show. I came up with this question on the fly.
Oh, so yeah, I don't know. I'm so bad at this part. I'm gonna go true neutral for her. Why not?
You think so? Why do you say that?
So I don't necessarily like. All right, how to say this without being like. So I think that if you messed with her family, she would mess you up. Like her character gives me the general feel that she has ties to Edgin and his daughter. And so they're her family. So she's going to do everything for her family. I think that if something happened and she straight up had to murder Ford, she would have done it for them. Like,
she was very go with the flow for.
Yeah, she's super just like, she didn't really concern herself about what was right or what was good or what was bad. It was very much like, what is going to be best for, my people, the people that I'm with, the people that I associate as family. Like, family is everything. And I feel like because of that, she would have done anything that she needed to.
Did you have another character remind you were about to say?
Nope, that's it. We're good.
Okay.
I have terrible at alignments. I'm so bad.
I think it goes without saying that Sophina is neutral evil.
Probably. What about Simon? Because when we first really meet Simon, he's trying to rob people.
He's robbing people while casting prestidigitation and making Critical Role references.
Yeah.
No, Simon's neutral.
You think so? Okay. I like it. So we mentioned the Fat Dragon. The Fat Dragon is actually Thimbershode, who is a character written in D&D lore, who he's a red dragon, a very, very old one who lives in the Underdark, supposed to be very large and slovenly, and this movie interpreted that as he's like horrendously overweight and just very Which
in the lore, he's gotten so fat and so big that nominally he can't actually leave his cave or lair. That's why he has like servants and butlers to bring him food and stuff. But here we have a dragon in the Underdark, and he's fat, and that's hilarious.
He's quite a chunk, and I want him so much.
And all the funny ways to make a fat dragon move around.
This scene is my biggest gripe of the entire movie. Not necessarily for the fat dragon parts, because he's adorably chubby in every way.
They have a plot together.
It's the fact that we once again, and this is one of the cardinal sins that the old 2001 Dungeons and Dragons movie made as well, is that all right? You just made a dragon into a big scary dinosaur that breathes fire.
Yeah.
And in D&D, dragons are very intelligent, and they talk, and they have personalities. And I was waiting for that moment, when they're trapped in the cave with him right behind him, that he started talking to them, and he didn't do that. And I was like, you just
I had the same thought.
Yeah.
At that point, just use a wyvern because you're not facing a dragon. A dragon is supposed to be very intelligent and talk to you.
Yeah,
so. Especially red dragons.
The best D&D dragon is still Smaug from the Hobbit movies.
And the best scene in any of those movies is the 30 minutes where Bilbo and Smaug are just talking.
And I would also love to find out how he ended up where he was, because the city that they were in is not where he is in the lore. I can't remember the name of where he is in the lore, but and they do mention it. I think.
He's from Gracklestone when they encounter him in Dolblind.
Right, but I think Zank says that he's their that this is new for him, because isn't there another dragon in Dolbland that, like, I think
once upon a time there was a black Draco Lich.
That's what I thought. Oh,
Undead skeletal dragon for the uninitiated. Basically, imagine any of the undead dragons from World of Warcraft.
But I'm with you, Adam. I was very disappointed that there was no dialogue, no intellectual discourse, no monologuing, none of that.
How long the movie was and how much stuff they had into it, I'm fairly certain that was cut for time. Because
possibly
a conversation with the dragon, like we were saying, like, it's a menacing affair if you're there in its lair, referencing the Hobbit movies again. That's another 20, 30 minutes onto a movie that's already over 2 hours long.
I still would have been even happy with it if he had shouted at them for being trespassers. Like, let's be honest, any words out of his mouth.
That he's something other than like an angry dinosaur.
Yeah. I'm with you 100% on that.
As an established dragon, he has lines he has said in lore, so he can talk. He just chooses not to because
he just wants to eat everything.
Yeah.
They make it a joke.
Even if it wasn't, even if there was no meaningful dialogue, like you said, Brandon, even if he was like, as he was chasing things across, he made like comments like, "Ooh, that's a tasty morsel," or anything like that to establish, no, this dragon is a person essentially and talks and has a personality. Then like it's not just a big scary dinosaur that breathes fire.
Yeah, I mean, I in my game, I just had to DM a dragon for a battle against my party members, and it's a party made up of entirely DPS characters, so it didn't last very long. But the dragon was busy, like, roaring at them, like calling them like aperitifs, and like how they're going to be crushed beneath her wings and things like that. And all the scary, usual dragon. I'm bigger. I'm bigger. I'm better. I'm higher on the food chain. Get in my belly. Stuff that they usually do.
No, fine.
Yes, the fat bastard reference was on purpose.
Of course it was. Was there? Well, there was another moment that confused me. Oh, is there a puppy?
Is that the puppy? Oh, hello, Flynn.
And this is the new pup. This is Flynn.
Hi, Flynn.
And you're now internet famous.
What up, dog? I don't have enough followers on YouTube for him to be internet famous, but it can't hurt.
I don't know. I don't know. Cute Dog launched an entire John Wick franchise. This might get you a big viewer spike.
It's true. What about, how did we feel about the moment where Zinc has this big, like, triumphant running, like, stab motion on and he drives a sword into the dragon's skull, and then the dragon is just like, okay after that.
I mean that's it's clearly not fatal, but primarily that was a trailer shot. But
yes, that's true.
It's basically just it's like trying to do this without spoiling Boots, but basically just it's the idea of like hitting somebody with something that make them go ow and drop what they're doing. It's just that the head was closer and he needed to close the mouth before Edgin got barbecued.
Barbecued Edgin. Not what's for dinner.
Not what's for dinner. I also really like it because it kind of plays into and I don't know if it was intentional or not, but it kind of plays into the whole concept on how people use hit points in Dungeons and Dragons. Like, he may have just scored a critical hit against this dragon doing like massive amounts of damage, but it still wasn't enough to really do that much damage because it's a dragon.
And it has a bazillion hit points.
Exactly. So I don't know
one bazillion.
Intentional thing, but I feel like it kind of, at least, in addition to being great for the trailer and fantastic cinematically, I think it kind of played into how a lot of people treat hit points in Dungeons and Dragons. So I think, especially for the movie, I think it was a great point. I think it was fun.
Yeah. Yeah, Adam, you also mentioned how in the arena scene, the arena was made up of 5-foot squares for the shifting arena thing.
It's true.
Great.
It's a player grid is exactly what it is.
It 100%. And when they're all sitting around placing bets and everything, it's even fantastic because you can see the player grid. It's almost like someone spent the time to put together all of the terrain that they're about to play on.
I want to play D&D around that betting table.
Yeah.
I wish, when I went back and saw this for the third time last night, I wished.
Of course you did.
Found myself that instead of putting like the chips on the betting table, for some reason they were rolling dice. We don't know how they bet in the Forgotten Realms. They could have been rolling dice at that table, and it would have been perfect. For like the 2 seconds that you see that shot, that would have been a cool nod. But
Yeah.
I'm nitpicking at that point. So,
But
Even with it was a great reference to how a lot of people run their campaign battles, which was fantastic.
I also leading up to the arena is another thing that. Remember when I said that 10% of things you haven't seen before in a movie? Can we talk about what happens when you fail to concentrate on an illusion properly? Because I love watching that scene.
Oh, that major image was great.
What madness is this? If you're a big fan of Chris Pine, I'd like to apologize in advance before you see this thing because you get to see him melt like he's cheese on a hot day.
It really was a great scene. You guys need to watch it just for that scene.
So
now that scene has objectively changed the way that illusion failures will happen in all of my games for the rest of time.
Agreed.
I especially like this.
Something is going wrong. If you're still trying to concentrate, but you failed your concentration check, then the spell is still trying to happen, but something is going wrong.
Yeah, I don't know that I've ever been in a game where it didn't just like go away. Or like I think it like froze in place, like like they were doing something like digging with a shovel, and then they just like stopped, and then like the dirt froze. I think my favorite part is how once, or I was in a game where that happened to the mage, but I don't know, like it wasn't as creative or interesting as this for sure.
This was very obviously played for laughs and mission accomplished, guys. But the best played for laughs thing, and this is an entire sequence because everyone's had a story where this happened when they tried to use Speak with Dead, and that entire like
best scene in the entire movie.
That's a sequence. That's a goddamn 8-minute long sequence, and it's awesome.
I also really love the fact that it wasn't just, as a DM, when you normally run a game, the first person they resurrect is going to be, I'm sorry, not resurrect, the first person they bring up for Speak with Dead, they're going to know what they need to know because you need this to continue and they need to go do things. But the fact that it wasn't, and they had to talk to people was amazing.
Excuse me.
Right, and that very first one where it was like, all right, was that a question? Yes. No, I didn't answer you. Only talk when I talk to you. Okay? Yes. Why did you say okay? You didn't. Like it was such a D&D table moment where the DM's just like, all right, I'm gonna shit with you today.
This
all right, get the shovel.
From start to finish had just a wonderful energy of a D&D game. I think that's where one of the things they really hit home with is that it felt like you were sitting down with friends and this was the game that you were playing the whole way through.
Also, apparently the fish that had the baby tabaxi in it wasn't a fish. That was apparently a sahuagin.
Oh, was it?
I don't know what that is.
Fish people.
It didn't look like a sahuagin, but we only saw its head, so that's interesting. But actually, it showed more of it, so it didn't look like a giant fish. That would have been cool to know. But no, I think you just nailed it on the head. Like it does feel like a bunch of friends, and that stands out in the funny moments, like the graveyard scene, but also stands out in the few I almost cried more than I expected to in a Dungeons and Dragons movie because of the genuinely touching moments. And that's the beautiful thing about D&D, the game. It's like 9 times out of 10, you're going to sit around the table and you're going to be laughing and shooting the shit with your friends, and it's going to be a good time. And then once in a while, like twice in a campaign, something really profound happens that makes everybody at the table go, whoa. And it's like a magical moment. And like a moment for that in the movie was when Michelle Rodriguez and Holga leaves Bradley Cooper's house, Melliman's house, and Chris Pine can tell she is not in a great place emotionally, so he pulls out his lute and starts playing a song, and it raises the spirits of the group, and it's a wonderful moment of genuine friendship. It's like something that a friend would do.
And it's like It's the only moment in the movie where a bard does what a bard does, like mechanically, if that makes sense. Like a bard
What does
is
the bard do?
a bard is by definition, you know, it's a person that performs, and you know, sometimes they play music, or sometimes they sing, or they do, you know, they do acrobatics or whatever. But like in D&D, a bard, they do that, but in doing so, they afford the party various benefits, and I assume it works similarly in fifth edition. I'm a third edition guy, but I assume so that, for example, they play they play a song of inspiration, and then the party's attacks become more accurate or what have you, and D&D fulfills that by adding modifiers to dice rolls. But so that was a kind of the only point in it's not the only time in the movie where he plays his lute, but it's like really it's a song of inspiration or a song of morale or something like that, where it kind of makes everybody happier, and it's just like it creates a nice vibe that it's like Adam said, like it really pulls out the friendship of everybody, and that's kind of the only point, or at least the big point that I remember in the movie, where he does what a D&D bard does, and he's not just playing a song to make money or something, or because he can. A lot of bards are just annoying.
I mean, bards are usually your face and often the planner, but I mean, I guess anybody can be the planner, but bards are usually the face, and he definitely does that too.
Everybody loves bards except for the party that they're in. That's the thing Adam used to say when I played a bard. This one, I know we're coming up on we're a little over an hour right now, and some folks said they needed to leave a little after 3. So that's one I do want to touch on. The decision that Edgin makes at the end of the movie. They've escaped from the maze. They've defeated Forge. Well, really, they defeated Forge. What they did was they robbed all the things that he robbed from the people, including this. Including this. It's not a scroll of resurrection. What do they call it in the movie?
Tablet of Reawakening.
Tablet of Reawakening.
Okay. So it's a magic item that allows one person to be resurrected even if they've been killed by a means that would otherwise prevent it. And he, this whole movie, he was out to get this item because he wants to resurrect his wife who passed away years ago. But he makes the decision at the last minute to resurrect Holga, who has been defeated in valiant combat by the Red Wizard.
He was shanked by the same no healing allowed blade that his wife was. Indeed.
So he because Holga is closer to the mother of his daughter than his wife was, because his wife died when his daughter was very, very young. So he instead of bringing back his wife, he brings back his best friend and the mother figure for his little girl. And I'm curious if there's any specific thoughts or feelings on that note. Well, no, your Kat's going to go first. She has the highest initiative.
Oh, sorry.
Yay! That rarely happens because I normally play our clerik, and for some reason I never roll well as a cleric.
Clerics want to go last anyway because they want to cast spells after people get hurt.
That's true. We're support, mid-lane support. It's where I shine. So I actually I liked that. I liked that whole sequence. I also really enjoyed the utilization of the dragonfly throughout the movie as he kind of came back to his wife. And I had read a couple of things online, kind of debates as to whether the dragonfly was a reincarnation of his wife or just an image of what he portrayed for his wife. But I really appreciate the fact not only did they have this brother-sister platonic relationship, which you rarely get in movies, between a male and female character.
His lips are too big for his head.
On top of that, like for him to choose someone that meant more to his daughter now than his wife meant to him was not only an amazing growth moment as a character, as a father, as a person. It was a really beautiful story point. Like Adam pointed out, like it was a beautiful point where he chose to bring back someone who was more important to his daughter, and yes, was very important to him, but was more important in his daughter's life than his wife was. And he even said it in the movie, like he wanted to bring back his wife, not her mom at one point in time, because she never knew her and he wanted her to know her. And so to bring back someone who was her mom and wasn't the woman that he loved as part of his soul was a really big step, was a really amazingly beautiful thing, in my opinion.
I'd agree. And I will just add, it struck me as a dungeon master, like a very intentional choice put upon a character by a dungeon master. And Adam can attest, usually, I have DM'd some games and Adam has played in them. And usually if I make a character make a big choice, it's because I force them into an awkward situation and they have to basically choose the thing that would just make them the most uncomfortable. So, but it definitely struck me as almost a thing that your dungeon master's been planning ahead for this, and you can choose to save this character that's been your goal all along, or you can save this player character. What do we do? Luke, any thoughts?
Since I pretty much agree entirely with everything that Kat just said, especially with the Dragonfly being a representative storytelling device for the format of movie. I was also kind of looking at it with the D&D tabletop game reference aspect of it, and going back to what Adam said, he's up here because flipped, of how everything's really, really fun and jocular until the one serious thing happens. And I was going to say that usually the first serious thing that a game would have is the death of a player character. And also in the movie, he flat out looks at his daughter and says, "Do you want your mom or do you want Holga?" And she nods for Holga. It's just like, all right, let's get this back. But it's also the D&D thing of having the story-related reason to abandon the current solution to your "I want my family back" because we need to resurrect the player character, because we don't want to roll a new character and have a new dynamic established, and also because we need our meat shield really, really bad. We're a bunch of squishy people.
Meat shields are important.
I mean, she almost literally carries the entire movie as far as combat is concerned until Doric does wild saving.
I was gonna say, yeah, it's she and Doric, and I read somebody who was offended online that the men in this movie were emasculated, but I thoroughly disagree with that take.
I just think that they weren't the stereotypical big hulking medieval man type like Conan the Barbarian. They're but they're still like they're very well-rounded characters in this movie across the board, and that applies to men and women of people of various races. And I am all about seeing interesting people in movies who don't look like me. So that's, I wouldn't. Chris Pine is not the manly hero, but he's a really interesting, really complex character in this movie. Even though he plays a lot of stuff for laughs, that doesn't mean that there isn't a lot going on under the hood there.
Yeah, it's the Robin Williams thing of I'm covering up my tragedy with jocularity.
Okay, Adam, I will. I'll let you can touch on this, or I'll let you go first and offer some final thoughts if you like. Anything else about the D&D movie you want to talk about? Any closing moments or closing thoughts?
Last thought I'll throw in. I'll rope it back into the Holga's death scene that we were talking about, and then I'll roll right into my final thoughts. But the part of that scene that made me tear up is a tie back to when she was leaving. It was Melliman, the Bradley Cooper's character's house, and he made the comment, when you left, or when I lost you, I lost my entire family. Now I have that again. I only hope the same for you. And there's a moment right after Holga comes back, and she's like, "Why would you do that?" And everybody piles on and bear hugs her, and you see her tear up a little bit. And I think that's the moment that Holga realizes he has her family now. And it was a nice tie back to that moment, and that's when I was like, "Oh, that's a whole other level of deep for Holga's character, not just the deep that Chris Pine's character Edgin just did." So I loved that moment. Overall, I think the movie was great. I've seen it 3 times. I wouldn't go out to see a movie 3 times in cinema if I thought it was bad. I might see it if it was mediocre and I really liked it, but it's not mediocre. This is a good movie. It's probably not perfect, but it's as close to perfect as I think you can get with a property like this, and it's pretty great. And they definitely left the ending open enough that they could have a sequel, and I hope it performs well enough to get one. And the last closing thought I'm going to say is, if you haven't seen this, you should see it. If you don't play D&D, you should play it. And this movie has a disproportionate number of blue-eyed people in the main cast.
Okay, I guess I wasn't looking that close. I will add that
again, correct. Hugh Grant's character, who I can't remember his name, and Sophia are all blue-eyed.
Interesting.
4 of 6 main characters.
I will. We talked a little bit about the box office so far before you joined, Adam, and so it is solid. It is not great. It is not like a.
It's not pulling in Marvel numbers.
Yeah, well, it doesn't have to necessarily to be successful, but it's not like you don't. It comes out on Friday, and we didn't know by Monday that there was going to get another movie. Right now, it hasn't pulled its budget yet, but it doesn't mean it won't.
We'll it's got positive reviews. Like most people that I've seen,
it's going to be a big word of mouth movie, I think.
And really, I think that a large portion of the people that would see this are diehard D&D fans. And 2 months ago, Wizards really shot themselves in the foot with their goodwill with their own fan base.
Yeah,
and they've mostly made it right, but the damage was still done, and it still makes a lot of people like. The biggest problem I have with this movie, honestly, is at the very end it says based on Hasbro's Dungeons and Dragons, and it's like, right? Yes, Hasbro owns Wizards of the Coast, but like. Wizards of the Coast is still its own company, and that's the name on the book.
You didn't,
and they didn't make it.
Didn't make Dungeons and Dragons. I'll also add this is probably going to be like a big merchandising movie. Like there's going to be toys and like you guys bought apparently more than one of the D&D popcorn buckets. That giant D20 that Luke's got there. Hold on, I'll make you bigger. That's a popcorn bucket.
Yeah. To be fair, all 3 of us have one. Yeah, you can bring up the group shot again. All of us are holding ours.
I went for the Super Mario question block tin. I didn't get that one.
We win.
Yeah, whatever. Luke, that's what I was trying to say. Any closing thoughts? Anything else you'd like to touch on?
I have heard people discussing the possibility of more D&D movies, but also of each of the future D&D movies from this point being standalone. Like possibly
I was going to say that. I hope
like one in Crid, one in Eberron, one in Greyhawk.
Yeah, since you jumped on my idea, I'll chime in now. I would like, and maybe we get like a D&D universe, and occasionally there's a pop in of a character we've seen already. But like, I would like the next movie to be like a whole different cast and either in a different D&D setting or a different region of Forgotten Realms.
All I'm hoping is
Was that Adam?
I disagree. I disagree. I think it should still be in Forgotten Realms. That's the main setting for D&D. And if you're going to start tying things under the D&D banner license, then a movie has to appeal to more people than just the fans who know what the hell is going on. And you start going, all right, you like the last D&D movie, but this one happens in a place called Ravenloft, and it is going to be a very different story to the last one that we watched. People are going to be like, what the hell is this?
Yeah, that was where I was leading with it. With as a fan, I'm okay with that. But like, for example, my favorite setting, official setting at least, is Eberron. But my God, there's a lot of lore in Eberron that's going to confuse the hell out of people with that 30 minutes of exposition. Forgotten Realms is standard fantasy enough that Joe Q moviegoer and his family can go see it and not be completely lost.
It's Forgotten Realms is generally the one I like the best.
Yeah, and also, but as long as they don't, as they keep like new characters and maybe ancillarily reference, like as long as we don't have a Drizzt Do'Urden movie, I think I'll be fine.
I could swear I've read an article in the last 7 days that maybe they're going to look at probably not the main character, but he might appear in a movie if they get to make another one.
It would be dumb if they did not include him in a movie. He's that big of a character.
I mean, but not about like how Elminster was in this one for about 45 seconds of screen time. If they bump into Drizzt Do'Urden while they're in Icewind Dale, that's fine. But I don't want a Drizzt Do'Urden live action D&D movie.
I wouldn't mind it because I mean,
I'd watch
Dritz,
it.
everybody eye rolls Dritz because he's a cliche, but he built half of the cliches that people are mad about him for.
I'm also primarily using him as an example, just because I know he's one of the most popular things. But the established characters have their place in the lore, but I do enjoy seeing the new characters that we don't come in with any preconceptions about. No one was coming in saying, "Oh, they got Edgin Darvis wrong. He's not like this in the book I read." There was none of that because he's a new character.
I agree. I like new
I
characters.
agree with that point for sure. What about you, Kat? Any closing thoughts on the movie? Anything else you want to say?
I mean, I agree with what everyone said here. It's a great movie. It's a great fantasy movie. You don't have to be a D&D fan to enjoy it because there is enough exposition, there's enough energy that all you have to do is enjoy fantasy movies. You don't have to be a diehard D&D fan. If you are, you're going to enjoy it. By the way, I would also totally watch a Dritz movie. I read all of his books. I'd be a fan. But
one more point on mine. The future movie should include like Indiana Jones map travel, just so we kind of know where things are.
I would absolutely watch a movie.
That was one thing I think the movie did well. That like you're not confusing the audience with another level of where is this graveyard in comparison to Neverwinter, because it didn't matter.
I know, but I still enjoy this is personal preference. Like I still enjoy like those parts in Lord of the Rings where it kind of pans out. You kind of see the map as it's kind of like zooming around.
So it doesn't. We don't necessarily need here's a city dot and we're going to this city dot, but like it still gives you somebody's talking over it or there's some music or whatever, like, and this is where the Shire is, and it comes over and says this is where Rohan is, and like, it doesn't need to be the Indiana Jones thing, but if some information about the geography would be appreciated.
Yeah, like we got the map during the title card of the movie after the prison break thing, but that was all we saw of the map. If they had like interspersed that a little bit, kind of like that, I mean, I know where these things are, but again, Joe Q moviegoer might not know. He might not know if the Crypt Garden Forest is 100 miles that way or next door. It's just one of those small things that's like a suggestion, not required, based on my preferences.
And we're not dealing with the real world. Like the average American knows that if you look at a map, California's on the left and New York City's on the right.
Yeah.
And if you go between them, and we don't, because it's a made up place, we don't really have that. I'm sorry. Go ahead. No, yeah.
I actually kind of like the fact that you didn't get the geographic references, because then the travel felt more realistic. The travel montage that they didn't feel overly put upon, because you had no idea where these places are. You didn't know they were traveling 7 days in the wrong direction to go to the graveyard or wherever else they were going, because you had no reference. So you didn't have to suspend your belief for that moment because you didn't believe in anything to begin with.
Like how they were teleporting across Westeros.
Yeah, like as Joe Q moviegoer, you didn't need to keep up with it because the montage was beautiful and they handled it in such a way that it was not necessary to understand the geography. I think if you were going for like a vast epic or something, that would be important. But in the context of this movie, I don't necessarily think it was.
Go ahead.
Everything was in the ballpark of Neverwinter. I understand it for this movie, but if there was more travel in a future movie, I feel like it would be a necessary.
If the story wasn't so I almost said down to earth, but if it wasn't so focused on a small group of people, and if it was more like the political or like focused on nations or kings, like even like Game of Thrones or even Lord of the Rings, then I think it's probably more important to know where Rohan and Gondor are related to Mordor, for example. But it's a very small group of people who travel some distance, but I don't know. That's probably a good point too.
I just love.
I think it ties back. It ties back to the point I made earlier that I think this movie gets travel done well, and it's a good lesson for like DMs or players in that like you don't always have to know where things are. You can hand wave travel away if the travel's not important. For something like Lord of the Rings, the story is walking from the Shire to Mordor. That's the story. Everything else is what happens along the way. thing is the reason. But the story is let's walk from the Shire to Mordor and see what happens along the way. So the travel is very important for that story. In this case, the travel wasn't very important. If they came out with another movie and it was, all right, you're leaving Neverwinter to go and confront the Théans in Thay, well, then you might want to show the travel in that case. But in this case, I don't think it's necessary, and I think it helps the average moviegoer accept the story because it's not very relevant. And I say that as somebody who is also a huge map dork, and I love maps.
Okay. Another final thought.
It's not that I just like maps. I love maps.
Yeah, I have my one last final thought on the movie. Thank God that the Théans are such utter bastards. We get good, classic, like Disney evil level bad guys. There's none of that morality bullshit or gray areas. We have people that are bad guys. They are basically, it's like if they are bald and have tattoos on their head, they are bad guys. It's just nice having like oh, good. I don't have to worry about what their motivation is or whose side I'm on.
I think that's a big reason that they picked the Red Wizards.
Oh yeah, we have designated bad guys.
Yeah, you can point out that the people that are in the crazy red cloaks are bad. You know, that's a very Disney or like very Star Wars thing where, as Luke looks at himself, they're like the Star Wars. In Star Wars, it's all about the silhouettes, and you can point out the shape. You don't even have to know it's Darth Vader. Or you don't have to know, like when Anakin is, when Obi-Wan, he's the good Jedi and he wears light colors. And then when Anakin isn't sure, he kind of wears like browns and grays. And then when Anakin goes bad, he wears black. Like it's visual and like just like in this movie,
color
you have the
code
Red
your
Wizards,
bad guy.
and she disguises herself as part of the movie, during a good chunk of the movie. But then when the red comes out, you're like, oh, she's one of them. And they are bad.
Especially
and I think it's something that Wizards is very conscious of because they did it in such a way that, like, a lot of times in movies when you cast, let's say, Théans, because it's a nationality, you'll often have one group of people, one like demographic of people play that group.
That's a good point because Zank, the paladin, is actually from Thay. He's a
right. Yeah, he's a Thay. That's what I was getting to. Is that we see that Théans are multicultural. So it's not like a lot of movies from the 2000s. If there was some like bizarrely kind of Eastern-esque culture, then they would look vaguely Persian, and then they wore makeup and they were the bad guys. It was just like it started to like toe into like just dunk full-heartedly into real-world racism, and that's something that,
Avatar: The Last Airbender here.
But it's something that Wizards with D&D has been very conscious of recently in the fact that that they're called races in D&D and what that means, and they're kind of removing some of the old restrictions because they were problematic in their in what they implied, but they also, in this movie, showed that, like, yeah, we're dealing with the Théans, and they're bad, but they're not bad because they're bad. They're bad because Zaz Tam was like, I'm going to turn you all into undead evil things, and you're all under my control, but let's also establish that not all of them are bad anyway, and we have one good one. So it just shows that it's something they've been very conscious of in the last year or so, as people started to call them out on it, and I found it interesting, and I think they handle it well, because again, the Théans that we see are diverse in and of themselves.
I like it. So I think, we definitely like the movie. I certainly recommend you check it out, whether you play D&D or not. It's
way better than Warcraft was.
It's way better than Warcraft was. This is like the third time we've mentioned the Warcraft movie of all things. But it's a great time, and it's funny, and it's fun. And it's, it's got a really warm, like family message at the end. And it's probably about as good as I could have expected a movie with Dungeons and Dragons in the title to be, and it thrills me to be able to say that.
And it's got a mid-credit sequence, so don't leave until you see it.
It does have a mid-credit sequence, and you should hang out because it's funny. As always, thanks for watching. If you want to hear more, don't forget to like and subscribe. My name is Brandon. I'm Engine25 on all the things, sometimes with an underscore at the end. You can find us on YouTube. Oh, everybody's waving over here. Yeah, sorry, I'm reading the script. Can't see the multi-view. You can find us on YouTube and podcast services by searching Engine25 reviews, no space in Engine25. We'll be back soon with a new review. And until then, guys, go watch a movie.